All right, so the Caro-Kann Advance is like the most common way that people play against the Caro-Kann. And white aims for gaining a ton of space. And I'm going to show you a game that Daniel Naroditsky played, and he's going to show us a great way to combat this space that white gets and actually flip the scripts totally around. And we're going to be the ones with a big center in a lot of cases. It's a really nice line. Stick around, check it out, because it's a really good way to totally flip things around. And white plays the most common moves. They just get a lost position. So let's dive in, take a look. So standard Caro-Kann moves, we get the advance, and we're playing this immediate c5, which is much, much less common, and white players are definitely not going to be as well prepared in this line as they are, for example, the more common bishop f5 ideas. So of course, white takes. That is the most challenging reply they have, and we hit them with e6, immediately aiming to get our pawn back, and we get some sort of standard moves from the ChessGoals course. You can check the link in the description if you want to get more information on the course, and then knight f3. There's a lot of sort of move order subtleties here that happen. White can play knight f3, they can play bishop to d3, they can play b4 immediately, and we're going to play the same sort of general idea in each one. So knight to d7 here, and now b4, and we drop back to e7. So it's possible to go back to b6, but in the ChessGoals course, we're playing this bishop to e7 idea. And our point is that we want to try to get a quick f6 in, and we're going to hit back on this pawn as quickly as possible. So bishop to b2, one of the more common ideas. And now we play a5, just taking a stab at this pawn. We force the white pawn forward. Now we never have to be concerned about a bishop coming to b5, pinning our knight. So we're quite happy with this. And now f6, just striking immediately. Now in the ChessGoals course, in this exact position, we're actually recommending knight to h6, but it's probably good chances that it's going to transpose. And this f6 idea is totally viable, and it can be used in a lot of move orders, especially, for example, if instead of this bishop to b2, they had played bishop to d3 here. Now it's actually best if we play f6 immediately instead of playing h6. A lot of these ideas are going to be really similar. But instead, f6 was played here, and then white played bishop to d3 now, and we've transposed immediately. So now we go knight to h6, and it just seems like it's sort of an innocuous move, but our idea is we're going to play knight to f7 and really ramp up this pressure on e5, and we're going to force white to capture, which is exactly what we want, because we're going to bring our bishop, contest theirs, and knock their center completely out of the park. Now, the best move for white to play is queen to e2, but the most common, like by far, is castling. And this is actually a huge mistake, and we already have like more than a one pawn advantage, you can see here. So instead of castling, they should really play queen to e2. And this looks a bit frightening because it seems like that they're going to threaten to capture here and they're going to win our e-pawn. But that's actually exactly what we want them to do. We can just castle. And if they do take, we can take back with the bishop. And yes, you can have my pawn with check. Please. Oh no, my pawn, right? Because we just simply step out of the check. And the problem is that this bishop is hanging. And we're also threatening to skewer the queen. And there's no way out of this. The best that they can do is to capture here. We simply take back with the knight, which opens this bishop up, meaning the queen has no escapes this way, has no escapes this way, and we're just going to play rook to e8 and win the queen straight out of the gate. Game over, done. You couldn't really do anything to get out of this. I mean, for example, you could try to just take the pawn here, but this really doesn't help you any. We can give a check, but we're just taking the bishop and we're up a clean piece. Now, queen e2 is the best move, just don't take our pawn. And the point of queen to e2 before castling is it's actually white who needs to strike at the black center immediately. And this queen to e2 is supporting c4. The other option for supporting c4 was to play knight b to d2. Again, white needs to strike back. And if they do that, we just get a really comfortable game for black. It's definitely equal-ish. Black's a little bit on the better side of it, but we're already doing fantastic here. So castles, and now our key idea. We play knight to f7, delaying castling, but now we force white to do something here. And really the best that they can do is to play c4. Oh, sorry, not that, but c4. But the most common by far is to capture. We take back with the bishop, and now they trade our bishops. We take back with the queen. And like, we're the ones with the central pawn. And here, there's only two good ways to counteract this situation for white. They got to play c3 or they got to play rook a2. And neither of those are moves that they want to play. Those are both really difficult to play. White wants to play c4. What do they want to do with this rook on a2? That's just a weird looking move. And so by far, the most common move is to play knight bd2. Seems like it prepares c4. It opens the rook up to come across, but this actually just drops a piece. I mean, just flat out, white is just down a piece for nothing. Okay, not for nothing, but not enough for the piece. We just play e5, and we're threatening this skewer. Or sorry, not a skewer. This is a fork, by the way, not a skewer. There's no way to get out of it. You can move the knight all you want, but with e4 still attacks the bishop because this pawn's in the way, which is one of the reasons why c3 was an acceptable way to play a move earlier. Rook to e1, trying to pen the pawn, doesn't matter. We just castle out of the way, and now c4 comes. What else are you going to do? You can't do anything else to prevent us from playing e4. So c4, e4, you got to take. We take, takes, and here. Queen d4 was what Danya played. Now, that's actually a bit of an inaccuracy. Now, it's hard to fault him. I mean, the move that's as the best is actually has a really clear idea, but it looks a little bit scary to play. Queen to e4, I suppose the point is trying to stay on this file and then opting to come back to the c7 square to attack this pawn. But it's better to go directly to e7. And the point is that we really need to control this c5 square. Because if we allow this pawn to move forward, it can actually get a little bit scary for black. So we play queen to e7, and say the knight moves out of the way, we really don't care. We can just play queen to c5, and say the knight comes up, we play knight to b6, and we already are doing quite well. We're up a piece for one, so of course we're doing quite well. We're doing quite well, like, no matter what. We've got a lot of pressure on the c4 square. We can play knight to d6. Eventually, maybe we'll play here. We can bring a rook in, and we're just going to pile up against the c4 pawn and make it weak. Now, in this game, where Danya played queen to f4, white had an opportunity to make things complicated. Now, they chose to play g3, but they could have played c5. And granted, black is still much, much better. We're still quite a bit better, but things are like challenging now. The best that we can do now is to play a4, our point being that we're trying to keep these pawns separated so that we have a weakness to a target. But it's not going to be that easy. So say rook to b1, which seems like a strange looking move, but the point is that white is trying to support these pawns, move them forward, create a pass pawn, and take advantage of the fact that our pieces are still a little bit awkwardly paced, and we haven't got a chance to get them out yet. The best option is to bring a knight into the center, free this bishop out, but then just simply trades, and we trade back, and now queen to d5 check is quite annoying. And we have to move the king out of the way. There's really nothing better. And then f3. And white has cemented this knight into the center, which is defending this pawn. This pawn's defended. We might run into a situation where white ends up with a pass pawn, and we don't really have any great squares for any of our pieces. This bishop is really struggling with where to go. And in fact, the only way to really maintain a serious advantage is to play the insane looking bishop to g4. Like, this is an incredibly, it's not obvious at all what the point is. But there is a point. The point is that we're going to take here. We're going to kick the queen because the queen is really lacking squares. You got to come here, which is an ugly square, or you can make the much, much more natural move here, which is the best move. And the point is that now we have knight takes g4, and we're threatening mate, and this is virtually unstoppable. You can try to play g3, but then I just give a check and then a mate. And there's really no way to stop this mate except for to sack the piece back with knight f7. And we just trade, and this allows the queens to come off the board, captures, and then after rook to e4, this knight's getting touched. We're going to drop this pawn, and we're going to be down to a situation where we've only got one pawn for the piece and 3 pawns against this one. White has some reasonable chances to get some counterplay here. This is a little bit ugly, which is why it was so important that going back way back, that we not play queen f4, but instead take immediate measures against the c5 square. Even queen to I think not here, sorry. Queen to f5. Yeah, queen to f5 is still an option. The point is it still controls this square. e7 is better because we have a more direct route. We're not worried about pieces getting in the way here. So as the game went, Danya played queen to f4, and then g3 happened. And now he drops the queen back to c7. And white really has no counterplay at all now. They're not going to be able to get c5 into the position. In fact, the game ended in just a couple moves later because rook to c1 was played, and he just played b6. And now c5 is never going to happen. We're going to put the bishop on this diagonal, which is especially looking juicy now that this pawn has moved, and this whole diagonal is much, much, much weaker. We're piling up on the c5 square. We're going to be able to bring our knights in. The f file's open. This is a god-awful position. So going back, I really like this idea of this super fast f6. Even in this position where we technically recommend knight h6, playing the immediate f6, totally viable. There's lots of ways for white to go wrong, and I think that this is a great way to play, and you're going to end up with a wonderful position. Best case scenario is you end up with a situation like this, where they don't capture here, but instead go for c4, and we'll just come back and play this, and this is not really an issue. They can capture the pawn, and this looks like it's a little bit scary, but it's really not. We have several good options here. I mean, the top 4 or 5 moves all have the same eval. This looks pretty terrifying, but it's really not. We can just play something like here, takes, and, say bishop takes, and we're going to take back here. And again, they don't really want to grab this guy because this is a major problem. This is yet another tactical resource that we have in the position that you should be aware of, is that this e5 square is often really, really, really soft. And if they can't grab that pawn, instead, say maybe they want to grab this guy, well, this is also good for us. We can play queen to d4, touching the rook. We can just take the pawn back. But even so, we have none of the problems that we ordinarily have in this position, which is cramped bishops, no room for our pieces. Here we have the bishop pair. We've got the freest bishops of all time, and we're ahead in development, which is like, what more could you possibly ask for from the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann? We're not cramped. This is wonderful. And I think that if you can play like Danya played, you'll be in a world of pain for your opponent. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.